Hey there guys, how are you? So before we dive into Jupiter Ascending and we talk about that abomination against movie theater screens, did I just give away my thoughts on the movie? Don't worry, we're going to dive deeper into that cesspool in just a few seconds. It's going to get dark, it's going to get creepy, and you're just going to be covered in a layer of goo and you're just like, get it off me! It's 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm sorry, but before we dive into the movie review, I first wanted to say, thank you guys. We finally hit 100,000 subscribers here on the FlickPick channel. It took about 4 years to do, a lot of videos, a lot of pain, a lot of agony, and a lot of weird things that went down over the past 4 years, but it was a fun time, so a big thanks to all of you guys who ever clicked that subscribe button. I know it hurt, it was scary, and it was painful, but you did it, and I really appreciate it. And by the way, in about a week or so, I'm going to have a very special video celebrating the 100,000 subscribers here on the channel. Yeah, it'll be a fun video, I promise you, and definitely look out for that. So let's dive into the movie review. This movie stars Magic Mike with elf ears. Mila, I was terribly miscast in this role. Kunis. Now don't get me wrong, I don't mind Channing Tatum as an actor. I even liked him in Magic Mike. That's right, I watched Magic Mike. I'm still a man, don't judge me. But I thought he did pretty well in this role. I think he did what he could with what he was given. I bought into him. I mean, even though the guy had prosthetic elf ears on, I was like, yeah, he's kind of a badass at times. And Mila Kunis, well, I think she's an okay actress in certain type of roles. Ones that don't need a lot of range or emotional acting moments. Now let's quickly talk about the plot of this movie. What is it all about? Mila Kunis' character is an heir to something very significant in the universe, and there's a corrupt family who doesn't want her to have it. And along the way, she's guided by her genetically enhanced warrior boy toy, Channing Tatum. Now Jupiter Ascending is directed by the Wachowskis, and they've made such great films as The Matrix and, well, The Matrix. In all honesty, I think they've only really directed one really good film, and that was the original Matrix back in 1999. I just haven't been a fan of anything they've ever made since then. I guess, you know, in all honesty, I think the best thing they were ever a part of when it comes to filmmaking since 1999 was being producers on the movie V for Vendetta. And since I already know I'm going to have that one comment down below where someone's like, well, I like Speed Racer. Well, you know what? Leave your name and your address down below and someone will contact you shortly. You don't like Speed Racer. Even if you think you do, you don't. Fuck that movie. Now, as most of you might already know, this movie was originally supposed to come out last summer, but it was delayed until the dumping grounds of movie hell, January and February. And I think that was, well, it makes sense after you watch the movie. It belongs in early February. It just feels like the right place for a movie of this quality. Now, before we dive deeper into the negatives, I do have some positives to say about this movie. At times, some of the action sequences were really well done. I like the way that they were filmed. Visually, you know, the camera was panning around. You really got to see what was happening. It wasn't all shaky cam jump cuts. For example, there's one action scene early on in the movie that takes place in Chicago. Yeah, the home of Batman Gotham City. And during this action sequence, it's really well executed. You have Channing Tatum, he's flying around the city, there's spaceships and all kinds of really cool things are happening, explosions, and I thought it was very well done. I was like, if the rest of this movie can hold on to that, we might have something here. Now let's talk about Mila Kunis, who was terribly miscast in this movie. Now throughout this movie, there's all these different scenes that basically say, hey, Mila Kunis, your character, is dealing with these life-altering decisions that could shatter your entire universe and everything that you know. But you don't really get any emotion from her as an actor. I mean, yeah, sure, she sounds whiny throughout the entire movie every time something happens, but her eyes just never convey that emotion. Not one tear drips down her cheek. And like I said, I don't mind Mila Kunis in movies. There's just certain roles that work for her, and this just wasn't one of them. If they had a different actress in this movie that could convey emotion and you felt like something was important and something was on the line, then the movie could have maybe been a little bit more impactful and, I don't know, a little bit more enjoyable, rather than just come across like, well, she doesn't care, why should I? And speaking of Mila Kunis' character, it's almost like the script for this movie wrote her to be the most unlikable character they could possibly come up with. Throughout this movie, she's supposed to show some backbone, some leadership qualities and abilities, but she possesses none of those things. And every 25 minutes in this movie, this is not an exaggeration, her character gets stuck in a situation where she has to be rescued by Channing Tatum's character. Every 25 minutes. That's all this movie is Mila Kunis is stupid, she gets caught, Channing Tatum has to save her, some random stuff happens, 25 minutes later, same thing happens. That's pretty much what this movie is. Now let's very quickly talk about a few other actors who star in this movie. One of them is Sean Bean. By the way, I got to interview Sean Bean in person last August. Most intense moment in my life. And no, he did not die during the interview. But anyway, in this movie, Sean Bean shows up for a few minutes and then he kind of disappears. His character comes in and out of the story a few times. But yeah, typical Sean Bean, but I love Sean Bean and I thought he was pretty good in the movie. Now let's talk about the corrupt villain of the movie, and that's played by actor Eddie Redmayne. And this guy has talent. If you've seen the movie Theory of Everything, where he played Stephen Hawking to a T perfectly, that man has acting ability. I thought that was a great, phenomenal performance, one of my favorites of the year. But his performance in this movie is one of my least favorites of the year. And let me explain what we're talking about here. Throughout this movie, it's almost like his character had a respiratory disease and maybe a case of mono, because he talks like this the entire movie. I want the planet now. Here's my biggest problem with this character, and this isn't really a spoiler of any sorts, but there's some kind of liquid goo in the movie that you can pretty much re-energize your entire body by dipping yourself into it. You know, if you're 150 years old, you get into the liquid goo, you're 30 years old again. So his character looks kind of old throughout the movie, but pretty much if he jumped in this liquid goo at any time, which he could do, he could be perfectly fine and his voice wouldn't sound raspy and annoying. And yeah, it's just my quick ramblings. But anyway, the character was awful. It was hard to watch. And Eddie Redmayne, I know you're better than that. Now, a few other things I quickly wanted to mention about the movie Jupiter Ascending is some of the character designs and set designs for the film. Now, at times, I thought they were unique, they really stood out. It almost had like a fun, lighthearted Guardians of the Galaxy vibe. But at other times, you're just like, what was that? Why would you do that? There's almost no consistency throughout this movie, because in one scene, by the way, I'm going to give you guys some backstory before I went into this movie. I talked to my fellow YouTube buddy, Chris Stuckman, and he's like, dude, look out for the scene with the elephant guy in the cockpit flying the plane. He's like, it's hilarious. So the entire movie, I was sitting there with anticipation. I was just getting goosebumps waiting for it. I was like, please don't let me down. I can't wait to see this scene. And then all of a sudden, the camera flashes to some guy who's an elephant man. He has got the tusk and the trunk and everything, and he goes, that's a bad elephant impression. Let me try it again. So the movie Jupiter Ascending, it's 2 hours long, but it really does feel a little bit longer than that because the movie almost becomes tedious because it's repetitious. It's almost the same thing happening again and again and again. And throughout the movie, there are some interesting visual elements, but just no consistency. So based on everything, I'm going to have to give Jupiter Ascending a D. I wanted to like this movie. I wanted a fun space adventure film because I love those types of movies. But this movie's just a mess. So anyway, guys, here's my question to you. Let me know down below in the comments. If you've seen the movie, what did you think about it? Or what is one of your favorite space adventure films? And you can't say Star Wars. Be a little bit original and unique. Give me those answers down below. Alright guys, so thanks for watching. And if you haven't already, make sure to check out my last movie review for American Sniper. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.